What was the most legendary thing a student did at school? Story 1. Maybe not legendary, but an interesting and funny experiment. There were 3 high schools in my hometown. 2 of them, both named after famous historical figures of said town, were in a sort of rivalry with each other. Nothing serious, but the students would casually trash talk the other school a lot, mostly in good fun. Each school had a display case with a bust of their own respective historical namesake somewhere in the building. There were some decorations, objects that you would pass by every single day and pay little attention to. So we figured we'd test how little attention people actually paid to these things. One night, a few buddies of mine and I got together. Most of us were from my school, but we had a few inside men from the other one as well. We split up into 2 teams, got access to both buildings simultaneously, picked open the very cheap locks in the display cases, grabbed the busts, and switched them. Keep in mind these schools were not that close to one another, and none of us had been old enough to drive at that point, so we had to carry these heavy limestone busts through half the town. We then locked the busts into the display cases again and left. We had managed completely non-destructive entry to both schools, so nobody ever found out. It took almost an entire school year for anyone to notice. To this day, no teacher has ever found out who was responsible, but no damage was done, so they didn't try too hard to figure it out. This is probably one of the most hilarious things I've ever read. I'm surprised nobody ever found out. Story 2. I've shared this story before, but it's probably one of my favorite memories of high school. Halloween costumes were banned at my high school because of some idiots, like 10 years before, dressed up and used it as an excuse to hide their face while they vandalized the school. My senior year, more than half of the class decided that we would still dress up and march into the school together in the morning. We all knew we would be punished right away, but it didn't matter. I stayed up all night making a suit of armor out of metallic duct tape and cardboard, along with a broomstick horse to ride. The next day, we all gathered in the parking lot and waited for everyone to show up. People went all out and there were a lot of amazing costumes, and after about 20 minutes of waiting, we started our march in. The dean had learned of our plan and were waiting for us right as we entered. They started pulling people aside in groups and taking student IDs to hand out detentions. In my group, there was one guy dressed up as an ATM. And the dean asked for his ID, started making ATM noises, and then slipped the ID through the slot where you would put your debit card in. It was one of the funniest things, and I was so jealous that my costume was not as clever as his. Even though having so many of us participate was pretty awesome, his costume just made that whole event for me. We had a legendary Halloween costume kid in a completely different way. He dressed up like a bloody tampon and told teachers he was a bloody ghost with a tail. I think about that every year. Story 3. A few years after I graduated, the school was preparing to take their assessment tests, which rate the schools. Many people think these tests are a waste of time. They're important to school administrators. So the principal ordered that some classes be interrupted to ensure that all the kids have refreshers in some basic math and writing skills. A few kids in a U.S. history honors class were angry. They resented the interruption because the classes were preparing them for an independent AP exam that awarded college credit. In response, they decided to intentionally sabotage the assessment tests. Our school was in an upper middle class area and regularly scored in the low 90s, placing it in the top 10%. Then suddenly, the school scored in the mid-low 80s. It turns out that 15 to 20 students out of 300 turning in absolute zeros can impact an average score. School administrators went berserk. Stories were circulated and students were threatened, but nothing came of it. The students never confessed. The tests were anonymous and the school rules didn't forbid poor performance. It helped that the students were led by kids whose parents were well-trained in protesting during the 1960s. It was a great scene. Story 4. Oh man, I have so many stories that fit, but I think I'll go with this one. One of the kids in my class was a notorious troublemaker. Let's call him Yazoo because that was the only substance I think I've ever seen him consume in my 5 years of knowing him. Teachers hated him because he had a bad attitude, and while he was sometimes alright, he could sometimes be really rude without any kind of warning or provocation. Anyway, we were in maths one time, and Yazoo was fooling around like usual. Bear in mind this was around the middle of the day, pretty much right after lunch. Our teacher was getting progressively more and more pissed off with Yazoo until eventually, she made the fatal mistake of saying to him, "If you're not going to pay attention, you can just leave." He shrugged his shoulders, said, "Okay," packed his things and went home. No one tried to stop him or anything. I don't even think he got in any trouble for it since he was technically just doing what he was told. I wish I had even the tiniest fraction of confidence this guy has. Heck, I wish I could do this at work right now.
Hey, guess what? Our team just introduced Rufus rugs. Premium, custom, hand-tufted rugs. Imagine having your own unique rug that perfectly reflects your style. Whether you're a dedicated Naruto fan or simply adore Pokemon and can't resist displaying bus toys, we can turn your dreams into reality. We can create almost anything you want. Don't wait. Dive deeper into the world of Rufus rugs by clicking the first link in the description.
Story 5. I went to high school in the early 70s. Our city had just implemented the desegregation of high schools by closing the only black high school and busing those kids all over the city to the white high schools. Racial tensions were pretty high at my school. Many of the white kids resented having to go to school with black kids, and the black kids were understandably upset at being yanked out of their own high school and mistreated. It was lunchtime in the cafeteria. I was sitting at the next table over from where a white guy was seated. I saw a black guy walking up to the white kid. He stopped in front of the white kid and said, "Hey, slur," the white guy responded. "Hey, slur." The whole room felt silent. I could see kids looking around, trying to decide what to do and where to run or hide. The expectation was that there was about to be a fight. Then, to everyone's surprise, both the black guy and the white guy burst out laughing and hugged each other. The black guy sat down and they ate lunch together. People looked so confused, unable to comprehend what had just happened. It turns out both guys were in drama class together and had decided to play a prank on everyone, trolling them. That's actually pretty wholesome. They probably diffused a ton of tension in the air by showing everyone else that it was fine to mingle with each other. Story 6. My school went into an intruder lockdown, only about a week after Sandy Hook. For reference, everyone was scared to death. SWAT teams surrounded the whole school, every police officer in the township was there, as well as every ambulance and emergency volunteer. Kids were texting their parents, telling them they loved them, and whispering what they could possibly be their last words to their families. My teacher was shaking and openly crying. After half an hour, we got the all clear, and while we were relieved, no one knew what the hell had happened. Turns out, a kid was doing a project for his science class and was using an umbrella as a prop for the video. An older security guard who was a veteran saw the kid with the umbrella in the hallway on CCTV and thought it was a rifle. That kid got locked out of the classrooms during a potentially serious intruder alert, tackled by SWAT, had guns pointed at him, was arrested, and held at the station for an entire day, all because he had an umbrella. That year, 2013, graduation had to be rescheduled due to rain, and the valedictorian straight up said in their speech, "We obviously couldn't have commencement in rain because this school doesn't have a great history with umbrellas." Kudos to the valedictorian for including that in their speech, but seriously, it must be really traumatizing for a kid. Story 7. Remember Channel 1, news service piped into US high schools? Here's how it worked. There was a giant satellite dish that would download the daily feed to a VHS cassette. That VHS would be played in a VCR that was on a master TV in the AV room. That master TV, when played, would automatically turn on a wall-mounted TV in every classroom in the high school. The TVs would turn off automatically after Channel 1 aired. For those that might not remember, Anderson Cooper made his TV debut in Channel 1, appearing live from Kosovo and other war-torn areas. Anyways, most teachers didn't use the TV other than for Channel 1. They were mounted high in the room, as in not very easy to access, and I don't even remember where the buttons were, or if it could only be changed or turned with a remote. What I do know is that most teachers had long lost the remote. Getting close to the end of the school year and some legend takes an adult film on VHS, puts it in the master VCR and takes the key, and the backup key, to the AV room, and puts them on the VCR. Then he locks both doors on the way out after pressing play. Her whole high school was echoing some actress screaming as she was having fun on every TV in the school. Story 8. A special needs kid received a 2-day in-school suspension because he threw a sharpened pencil into the drop ceiling tile. He saw a friend of mine do it and thought it was the coolest thing ever. A kid on the football team heard about what happened and protested the suspension directly to the assistant principal. The assistant principal stood firm in his decision and threatened, "And if anyone else gets caught, there will be out-of-school suspensions." The following Monday, the entire second floor was closed down for the morning. It turned out that the kid and the football team had accessed the school over the weekend and covered the entire second floor ceiling with sharpened pencils. The video of it was stellar. Well, they're going to need an out-of-school suspension for everyone if they're going to clean all those pencils off the ceiling. If you don't want to be in charge of cleaning the pencil shavings, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Story 9. I still have no clue who did it, but someone went around spraying mace, pepper spray, or something into the ventilation shafts during lunch. My school had 2 lunch periods to accommodate a population. The first time was in the second lunch period during which I had class. I was walking in the stairwells to class when I started coughing, along with a lot of others. It felt like I'd swallowed sawdust. I was near the science lab, so I thought it might have been a chemical reaction gone wrong. The next day during lunch, the upper floor was completely deserted. As I was going upstairs, my friends and I started noticing we felt the same, like there was sawdust in our throats. When we opened the door off the stairwell to the forum, the effect increased tenfold, and a teacher ushered us back into the stairwell. We barely got to class when the entire school was evacuated. If the culprit was ever found, I never heard about it. And word spreads fast, so I'm guessing they got away with it. To the culprit, screw you for the throat pain, but thanks for the 15-minute evacuation so I didn't have to go to science class. The closest thing I can imagine to how this would feel is when you finish gym class and that one kid just empties an entire bottle of cheap Axe body spray on themselves. The sweat and Axe form a sort of deadly combo. Story 10. School just decided to give everyone iPads after a few years of using them as textbooks in physics class. During lunch, everyone turns on Airdrop to share memes, even though they weren't supposed to. However, the teachers let it slide, figuring it wasn't worth punishing since everyone was doing it, and nothing excessively inappropriate had been found. In my younger siblings' class, one student decided to airdrop a meme about being the principal. It wasn't inappropriate and used a photo of the principal from when he was a math teacher earlier in his career. The student found it in some archived page in the internet. As far as I recall, the text was just meant for laughs about how the principal used to teach math and is now the principal. It was basically a silly thing that the staff would have laughed off after telling him not to use school staff in airdrop memes. The student who did this had never acted out in school before. The worst he probably did was forget an assignment or two. Surprisingly, he got detention for a whole week. It seems the principal is some kind of complex. No other student has gotten into as much trouble for airdropping things at the school. Now on to another story. I have to share something about my own kid. My whole response to this situation is the Will Ferrell meme. I'm not even mad. That's amazing. My child and his best friend started the bubblegum cartel in middle school, both of them being Italians. Apparently, you can't pull Italians together without forming a criminal organization. They started a bubblegum multi-level marketing scheme and got a good portion of the school involved. The kids at the bottom sold the gum, while my son and his friend provided and made the money. Apparently, it became so extensive that the middle school had to hold town hall meetings on 3 separate occasions to address the issue. They informed the students that the bubblegum cartel had to stop, and that they didn't know who the perpetrators were. They also mentioned that the kids selling the gum needed to stop because they were doing all the work and making little money, while the perpetrators were making all the profit and taking advantage of them. Throughout middle school, not a single student turned them in. The school had no idea that my son and his best friend were the leaders of the cartel. I always wondered why my son kept asking me to buy gum wherever we went. I thought it was just a phase. He then informed me that it was free gum for him to sell. I couldn't stop laughing. My partner was incredulous that my son took advantage of me, but I couldn't be mad about it, even though I probably should have been. That night, for the first time in my life, I felt like I was floating on clouds and experienced true peace, because I realized that my kid is going to be okay. I agree. Put 2 Italians together and they'll form a criminal organization. Or a pizza joint. Or a criminal organization fronting as a pizza joint. Story 11. In high school, 2 seniors who had been buds since forever got into a fight in the hallway between class periods. What makes it legendary is that they first met in taekwondo class, when they were in kindergarten. Movies just show the performative aspect of martial arts. This was just, they were doing flying kicks at each other. It was so brutal. The teachers didn't dare to break them up. They only stopped because they got tired from beating each other senseless. Story 12. One of the farm kids in my school brought a dump truck full of hay bales from his family farm and literally blocked off every single entrance and exit to the building with them. He did this really early in the morning. The school was in the middle of nowhere, so nobody knew exactly who did it except me, his partner in crime. He canceled school for a day and a half. The reason why he did this? The principal was an absolute jerk who hated kids. This kid's sister got in trouble for something she didn't do, and this guy brought her to the principal's office and made her apologize for trashing the girls' bathroom to the entire school over the public address. When we were done with the escapade, we also filled the principal's car with turkey feed through his open skylight. The first day back, while everyone was at a rally about the aforementioned hay baling, everyone had an idea of who did it, but since nobody was around for it and the cameras weren't working, we got away with it. My friend was called to the office to face the same date as his sister anyway, but when the public address turned on, the absolute legend said this. Hello everyone, I'm sorry that the school got turned into a barnyard, but on the bright side, I bet it made Mr. Principal feel at home, and his favorite meal is hay. Story 13. We had a strict bathroom policy at a high school where I taught. The office secretary implemented and enforced it like a tyrant. Personally, I had an issue with this and would let my students go when they asked, emailing her to inform her. I just couldn't deny my students this basic need. I understood that there were occasions when a student may not truly be in need of the restroom, but I wasn't willing to deny those who were. So I would document and inform the secretary whenever I sent a student down. I mean, the students were causing issues like overflowing toilets by stuffing things down them and smoking in the stalls, so I understood that we had a problem, but I still found it difficult to deny them. Anyway, it was a normal school day, and my students were busy working at their desks. I was sitting at mine with another teacher on the other side, calling students up individually to review their work and guide them to the next part of the 2-subject project. As we were in between students, preparing and making notes for the next student, a male student approached and leaned against my desk. He said my name, but the other teacher was talking, and I was looking in her direction. The student repeated my name and then asked if he could go to the bathroom. Before 15 seconds had passed, the teacher stopped talking to me, and I turned towards the student, only to find him making a face while urine streamed across my desk. He asked again if he could go to the bathroom, and I was like, "What the heck? Yes, of course." Following him down the hall, I asked him why he did that, and he said the previous class and teacher wouldn't let him go. That was taking too long to answer. I was in shock and, well, pissed, no pun intended, because I always allowed my students to use the restroom in my class. This incident didn't need to happen. It upset me that he had been holding it for so long that he couldn't control himself. I made sure to convey this to the secretary and the administration. After that incident, I no longer informed the secretary or gave her any power over students and their bathroom needs. He flooded my desk in the hallway. Poor kid. How is denying someone bathroom breaks not illegal? Should have just on the table. One way to send a message. Story 14. Not a student, but all seniors. It was customary at our high school that on a hot day near the end of the year, seniors would start a water balloon fight. It was usually quite small and the teachers were used to it, so they could put a stop to it quickly. Not this time, though. We had been dropping hints here and there for several days and weeks beforehand, talking about it in the hallways with an earshot of teachers, leaving behind empty balloons, etc. The day before the actual attack, after school hours, we brought thousands of balloons to the school, and a good 10 to 20 people started filling them at water fountains and in the toilets. We kept them in big buckets, filled with water so the balloons wouldn't burst, and hid them in the bushes around the school. The day of the attack, we had some mock maneuvers. A group of people would suddenly start running towards the school entrance, the toilets, the principal's office. Teachers would be running to stop us, only for nothing to happen. Then came the actual attack. Everyone suddenly ran into the bushes, grabbed the buckets, and started unleashing hell on the other kids. The teachers closed in, trying to destroy our balloons, but there were just so many they couldn't get rid of them. Everyone was soaking wet after. The most legendary thing, though, wasn't the number of balloons or the planning of the attack. It was the fact that each and every senior participated in that, buying balloons, bringing buckets, filling balloons, etc. Everyone did something. Despite all the high school drama, we managed to all come together for this epic prank. Story 15. My best friend in high school was a chubby gamer with zero social skills named Hyundai. I was his only real friend. He had a unique wheeze for a laugh and was probably the funniest person I've ever known. Too bad no one gave him a chance. The old gym teacher, who was an ex-Olympian, always used to pick on him because he would mumble and never pay attention. One day in gym class, while Hyundai and I were shooting hoops, the gym teacher was beside the court talking to the grade 12 athlete of the year named Avery. We were in grade 10. The gym teacher started talking smack about Hyundai's shot. He challenged Hyundai one-on-one. Hyundai mumbled and laughed it off, saying no on his own weird way. The teacher said, "Okay, fine. Both of you," pointing at me and Hyundai, "versus us, him and Avery." I snapped, "Yes," at him faster than Hyundai could reply. Some background knowledge. Hyundai's ball court nickname was Hot Sauce because he'd dribble in the wildest, most comical style, sometimes getting past a defender, but would totally whiff the ball when he got to the net. I had a signature hook shot that I could shoot from far off, and it was accurate as hell. The game was up to 5. The teacher cockily gave us the ball first. The strategy was to use Hyundai to fake a pass and go for the hook shot and to avoid letting the teacher get possession because he had a nasty jump shot. It worked. I scored 4 times straight, but it got harder to pull off every time. Our opponents started taking us seriously after the 3rd point, and my 4th point barely and awkwardly made it in. I tried it a 5th time and missed. The gym teacher showed off his shooting skills and got 3 shots in back-to-back. The score is 4-3, in our favor. I was starting to lose hope. Hyundai, who wanted nothing to do with this game, had no expectation of winning, and hoped I would carry him as the game played on. Flipped a switch and stuck on the teacher like white on rice. Gerardo passed to Avery, he laid it up, it was 4-4. Game point. Hyundai guarded Gerardo, stole the ball, stepped back, and shot like he was Kobe Bryant from near 3-point range. There was no fear in his eyes as he knocked one in. I'd never seen him cheer and wheeze as hard as he did that day. That was definitely one of the best moments of his life. Core memory is going to pass on to his future kids. If you made it this far, I hope you liked the video. And if you did, I know you'll like most badass accidental comebacks ever said. Make sure to check it out. Story 5 is unbelievable. See you on that video.